Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Halfstep Pod. I am your host, Connor Lane, and across from me, as usual, my co-host, Grant Fisher. Grant, how you doing, man?
Great, dude. Been a fun week. It's Saturday, the 2nd right now. So hopefully have a good start to April. We've got a few more weeks here training, probably 2.5 weeks before we go to altitude. And then it's Park City for the next 2 months, maybe a little longer. So last little time at home, if you would call it that. So trying to soak it up. It's actually been sunny in Portland, so we've been enjoying the great outdoors. It's been fun.
Yeah, I hear you guys have been on numerous adventures, some successful and some failed. But first, before we talk a little bit about that, you get got by any good April Fool's things yesterday? We didn't record, but I don't know. Your team and yourself, you were a part of quite a joke. I almost stopped for a second and considered that this joke you were trying to pull on me, might be true. But maybe let the people in behind the curtain on if you are running for Athletics Canada in the future, and maybe describe that.
Yeah, so maybe 2 weeks ago, someone from Athletics Canada reached out to me about doing this April Fool's prank, where they release an article and a big statement that I'm representing Canada from here on out. I'm a dual citizen of Canada, so I've always had the option to represent Canada. I think at this point, now that I've represented the U.S., I think I would have to wait like maybe 2 years before officially representing Canada. But they typed up the article and ran it by me, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty convincing, actually. And yesterday they dropped it, and my phone was actually blowing up with people. Some people shocked because they believed it. Some people angry because they believed it. And other people like just laughing because they were like, oh man, that's a pretty good one. So it was pretty convincing. I thought it was funny. Some people were kind of mad, or like were mad for me, if that makes sense. Like they were like, this is unprofessional. I thought Canada should make this joke. And I was kind of like, I mean, I thought it was pretty harmless.
Man, that's a whole different slant.
If you read the article too, it's really funny. There's like some good like Canadian jokes in there. So
gotta love that.
I thought it was a harmless prank. And I think several people got, as they say. But yeah, because I knew I was involved with an April Fool's thing. Like I just didn't believe anything that I saw on social media yesterday. Which I
had a couple
for good or bad. Yeah.
I had a couple people who fell for the, I don't know about fell for. Has it been confirmed yet that Lopez won't be doing Dancing with the Stars when recording starts this fall?
Yeah, that was an April Fool's prank as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When I kept reading, I got to the part about him training remote. I was like, I don't know if Jerry would be completely on board with this. But yeah, I got a couple people very close to me, pretty good early on Friday. So yeah, I don't know. April Fool's, I feel like, has been missing this year, at least for me. Like I feel like I woke up and was very much like, I don't really know if I'm in the mood for many jokes with everything in the news or just how wild stuff has been recently. I felt like I was gonna, kind of like what you said, immediately look at everything as I don't really trust this off the bat. But yeah, I guess it's a fun thing to be a part of. And then we've been trying to record here for a couple days. We got something a little bit new. We've done race recaps of your old races and also older professional races and collegiate races and the like in our first season of the podcast. And obviously we do race recaps when you race nowadays. But we're going to be trying a new feature, which will be available to everyone on our YouTube channel, where we've got some visual clips to link up with us kind of telling the story of the race that we're going to be recapping. So, but we finally are getting this recording in. It's been an eventful morning for you. I know initially we were going to record, and then my voice was really not cooperating after cheering on everyone at our home meet yesterday. And then you were going to go to a soccer game, I believe, but it didn't quite work out.
Yeah. So last night I got this text from Emily Pritt, who works for the Bowerman brand team, and she was like, hey, I've got 4 tickets to the Timbers game this weekend. Do you want them? And I was like, yeah, of course I want them. I love soccer, and the Timbers games are really fun. And so I talked to a few of the guys, and they were like, yeah, we're in. And the game was at 1:30. So yeah, rallied the boys. We drove down to the stadium, parked really close to the stadium, which is rare. So we were all like,
how few people were there?
Yeah, we were like, man, this is awesome. We got great parking. Walked to the stadium, and this was Thomas and Kieran's first Timbers game, and they were like, man, it's kind of dead down here for the game starting in 10 minutes. And I was like, yeah, it is kind of weird, but I guess the Timbers haven't played great in its early season. But yeah, and so we like kept walking, and we go up to the gate, and there's a big sign that says 7 p.m. Portland Thorns game, which is the women's professional soccer team in Portland. And we're like, that's kind of weird. The Timbers are playing at 1:30, but they're advertising the Thorns game. And then Mark turned to me and asked, like, are you sure the game's today? And I looked at my phone and looked at the tickets, and it said Sunday, April 3rd. So I messed up. I'm going to get roasted pretty bad for this one. I've already been, the guys are kind of busting my balls over this one, rightfully so. I messed up pretty bad. So thankfully the stadium is only about a 15-minute drive. So in all, we probably wasted with the walk maybe 45 minutes.
I appreciate you not blaming Emily and saying that, hey, she said tickets for this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have looked. I don't know why I just neglected to look. Yeah, so I'm going to get ripped into for this one. We're all getting together and watching some of the March Madness games, the Final Four games, which I think are tonight, hopefully.
Fairly confident.
Yeah, so, yeah, I really hope those are tonight because...
no, those are tonight. North Carolina is tonight. I know this.
Yeah.
I promise
so,
everyone from North Carolina. So that'll be something good.
Yeah, rightfully so. And I'll continue to get roasted for this one probably once the rest of the guys find out. But hopefully, hopefully the game tomorrow is good. I was like, if the game tomorrow is good, then the guys will be like, they'll forget about it and be like, man, that was such a good game, whatever. But right now I'm getting cooked. Group chat is going to light me up.
The benefit of this is you get to record this pod. We have time to do it today, which is very exciting. True. So yeah. and that windfall, at least for everyone listening, I think, even if you will get clowned for this, pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to talk about the week at all of training? I feel like it's a pretty typical week for you, or do you want to get into this race recap? We can spend a couple minutes, whichever way you want to go.
Yeah, let's do a high level overview of training right now. I feel like that's people are always interested in stuff like that. So sure. We are back to base training, fall training, which might seem shocking considering USAs and stuff are right around the corner. But mentally, I've been liking to divide this year into kind of 2 seasons. We had like fall training and indoor season, and then we'll have right now spring training, but it's more like fall training and then outdoor season. So kind of splitting it into 2 makes it feel like, at least in your head, less of like one expansive season where you get burned out by the end, and more like a climb and peak and emotional high, and then kind of a reset, and then another build for the summer. So our workouts lately have been a lot of hills, 200s and 300s off of short rest. So that would be like 200s in 29 to 30 seconds with 100 jog in 30 seconds, or 300s in maybe 46 seconds with 100 jog. Again, the jog being in 30 seconds. So stuff like that. And then we're also doing long tempos. We did a 10-mile progression / tempo thing on the roads yesterday. Mile repeats on the grass, stuff like that. Just classic, like almost cross country training, which does feed into our feature of this episode quite well. But yeah, we'll ramp up and we'll ramp up and hit the track. Do a little more specific sessions as we approach camp a little closer, and then especially at camp we'll have some pretty focused sessions where they're not as general conditioning type works. So yeah, it's good. Nice little reset. Nice to be home, but I think the guys are starting to itch for a little more, especially as now it's April. So yeah, fun things ahead.
Yeah, is there a race on the calendar next for you guys yet?
There is not officially. Some of our 1500 guys will do a race soon. But yeah, I don't have an immediate race on the calendar, especially with the year just being condensed because of this US 10K being moved up. Because we use altitude, it cuts your opportunities to race, because once you get to altitude, you don't want to leave for like a month. So yeah, kind of cuts things down.
That's one thing Elise was sad about during our interview, kind of like wishing she had an opportunity to race more. I mean, obviously the training and the work that you guys are putting in is paying big dividends, but as runners, I'm sure like wanting to racing is kind of the thing that you're training all that time for. But there will be big and important races along the way that will culminate your track season. Just like this race that we're going to recap today culminated a cross country season a few years ago. We were talking about, and I guess honestly they probably know already by the title of the video and the podcast, but we're going to be talking about NCAA Nationals in 2018 held in Madison, Wisconsin. What really boiled down to afterwards as kind of, I guess, maybe the first time that you and Morgan really butted heads over the course of what became like a lot of battles throughout your last year in the NCAA. This was a race with snow on the ground. It was electric to watch, and it was a really close battle all the way through. I don't know if before we kind of get into it and we talk about what we're going to be looking at, you want to kind of talk to the people at all about what NCAA Nationals was like for you, or more broadly this rivalry.
Yeah. I'll give a little context. So my cross country career at Stanford, I was 17th my freshman year, 5th as a sophomore, 5th as a junior. And so going into my senior year, I really wanted to win. I really wanted a team title too at some point. We had been on the podium every year that I was there. This year, realistically, in 2018, we were probably going to be fighting to get on the podium, more so than trying to be on top of the podium. And I had left the previous year's race with a bit of disappointment in myself. I don't think I raced it very well in 2017 in Louisville. So I wanted to get a little more out of myself. I thought, this is my last opportunity to run NCAA cross, but also it might be my last cross country race ever. At that point, I had wanted to go pro after the year, and professionals don't really race cross country too much. So I was like, man, this might be my last time on the grass. So I want to make the most of it, try to get a win and grab a low stick for my team. So that was a bit of the context within the 2018 season. I think in my mind, it became clear that Morgan was going to become my greatest competitor at the championship. He had been having a great year. I believe he was undefeated going into NCAAs. And he had run, I think, 13:15 on the track, which back in my day, sub 13:20 was pretty wild. So I think only he and maybe Justin ran under 13:20 while I was in college, because I don't think Ches ever dipped under.
Yeah, no, I don't think he did either.
Anyway, yeah, Morgan was well established, great athlete, and we had kind of raced with each other in previous years, but this was, like you said, the first time we really went straight at each other. So, and it did set up a very exciting year of battles between he and I. Yeah. Any more to add?
No, I think that's it. I think the only thing I would ask about really quickly is you talked about in 2017 not running well. That was my freshman year. I remember talking to you after the race, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but you kind of maybe didn't feel the best early on in that race and made a decision to not go with the couple of guys who ended up winning the thing when it split open relatively early on in the race. And I remember chatting with you about that and that decision. I was like, there was definitely a fear of blowing up, which can certainly happen in a cross country race. And then all of a sudden you go from scoring a low stick for the team to really not kind of providing the advantage that you usually would as a one stick. So is that kind of how you would recollect 2017? And then also with that approach into 2018, obviously you're fitter. You're probably not going to have an off day like you maybe were experiencing in 2017, but there's got to be a little bit of fear with the added team component as well. You got to still deliver no matter what the situation is.
Yeah. I mean, we could get into the 2017 year in a whole episode, just, taking apart that race. But to summarize, yeah, the race got going early. The NAU boys really started pressing very early in the race, and a pack of maybe like 40 guys started breaking away. And I was looking at that group, and I was like, the people in that, they aren't going to keep that up. I'll stay here. It's a little more conservative. I don't want to risk too much. I didn't feel great at that point, so I was like, yeah, they'll be back. And they never came back. So that was a lapse in judgment for sure. Something, I mean, I feel like I do have regrets about that race. I don't think I raced it well. I mean, can only blame myself for that decision making, but managed to pick my way up the field and do well, but it was not what I had been envisioning exactly. And I just didn't like the feeling that I let those guys go. Like I just, let them go free. And then by the time I realized, hey, they're not coming back, it was too late. So I didn't even give myself a chance. Not that I think I would have won that race, but I didn't give myself a chance to race with the guys that I wanted to race. So 2018, I didn't want to do that. Any move that was made, I was planning on covering.
For sure. And that, without further ado, I guess we will start with, looking at the first little clip that we've put together, describe or kind of showing you guys parts of this race as told from Grant's perspective. So what we see here, man, is the massive start of a cross-country race. It's something like NCAAs. Tell me about the start. Where are we? Left side, right?
Yeah. So if you squint and make out the pixels, I'm on the far right. The Stanford team started on the far right of your screen. A nice dusting of snow on the course. Felt very Midwest, which I grew up in Michigan, so I was embracing it. You kind of have that mad dash at the beginning. You go out much harder than what your actual pace for the race will be. It's a chaotic environment. It's something where you really have to calm yourself and get out nicely because, there's over 200 people in the race. So you do want to get out hard, get your team in established position, and be ready for anything. I think it's fun watching all the fans, sprint from one spot to another to see everybody. The race was at Wisconsin, a great course. I really liked that course. It felt like true cross country. None of that, 2K loops on a golf course, which was nice. So
there's Morgan right in the front.
Yeah. So Morgan gets out well. Again, it'll be hard to find me, but I'm maybe like 15th or 20th in there, kind of bouncing around. I'm in a red kit on top, black shorts on the bottom. That was kind of the start. I got in good position, I thought, and I could see the guys that I wanted to race at the end. So I was like, all right, I'm content here. And to map out the race plan, essentially it was be invisible would be what Coach Milt told me beforehand, which just means like, don't be at the front pressing. It was a little breezy. There's no need to lead, or oftentimes in a cross country race, you're like 3 or 4 wide at the front. He's like, you don't need to be in that front row. Just be in the pack, conserve your energy, just kind of chill, and let the race come to you. If any moves happen, cover it. But over that first half, unless massive moves are being made, that's not when you're winning and losing the race. So just chill and wait for the first half. And I got in good position and was happy with it.
It's fun listening to you even talk about race strategy, especially cross-country race strategy, because you sound more relaxed. It's definitely, I remember whenever Milt would talk to us about race strat, and over a race like that long of a distance, it was always about relaxing and being calm and composed, and like all those types of buzzwords. I feel like that do help you kind of relax when you think about them mentally in the race. But I feel like the opposite of relaxation is what happens at the start of every cross-country race, where you're going out in like 63, 64, if not faster, for the first 400, which we talked about. We titled an episode this the other day, 64 point, which is currently what you have to run your 10K PR. But back in college on a cross-country course in the snow against, and no one was that fit as you are now years later, starting out in 63, 64, sometimes 62, maybe a couple guys go sub 60 or something crazy like that to start a 10K. can really shock the system. How do you handle that? And then like, what are some thoughts? Because pretty much everyone in the field is starting out with that and immediately going into like, some sort of debt, some sort of like hurt locker, and then trying to recover and bounce out of it. How do you approach that? And how have you heard about like guys approaching that in general?
Yeah, so that first little bit, you are kind of running on adrenaline a little bit. Biggest meet of the cross country season. You're there with a bunch of your buddies, some of your best friends, and you want to show out. You want to do well. You want to get out well, because the problem is you can see how many people are lined up across the start line. Apologies for people that are listening to the audio only version.
But you can imagine it in the audio version.
You can imagine a line of athletes, of 200 athletes. And it narrows down. There's a turn, there's a right-hand turn, maybe 800 meters in. So we were if you're standing on the starting line facing the course, we were on the far left. So we needed to get up and around to the far right for this right-hand turn. So you got to get out hard. There's no way around it. It's really hard to pick your way through a field if you get buried too deep. You can do it for sure, but it's kind of unnecessary.
A lot of wasted energy doing that.
Yeah, I feel like that first 400 meters is kind of free in a sense. Like you're free to go really hard. Like, I don't know if anyone's going sub 60, but if you run a 64 versus a 68, I don't think you're actually conserving that much more energy. You might as well just, get out well and get near the front. Because like I said, in the prior year, the race got away from me. There was a breakaway and I didn't go with it. I didn't want to be caught in a situation where there was a breakaway and I couldn't go with it because I was
for sure
stuck. It's hard to relax. There's bodies around you. There's people screaming and yelling on the side. There's your coach that you can kind of hear their voice like break through the masses. But, you just have to center yourself, know that it's a long way to go. You don't want to be fighting battles too early. Unnecessary battles, that is. So, it's a game of conservation at the beginning.
For sure. And okay, so moving now into 3K, right, where we're looking at this clip, everyone is still pretty together. This might be a bit of a departure for people watching like the last couple years of NCAA cross, where, there's been some real front running that's blown stuff open. Connor Mance will feature in this race pretty heavily, still front running. But the difference is that there's definitely still a chunk of pack together. So take me through the 3K clip. Talk to me about like how aggressive of a pace was this first 3,000, and then is anything else you noticed? We can also play it back. I know you've got a good story from this part of the race as well.
Yeah. So we're just about at 3K here. The course kind of winds around and you kind of settle into a rhythm. In this case, it wasn't too quick of a rhythm. As you can see, there's lots of guys still in it and there's no breakaway. But you can see the NAU boys up there, the Colorado boys, you got Connor Mance up there. Tough to see me again. I'm kind of hiding. But I'm maybe three layers deep.
You and Morgan are both hiding.
Yeah, just watching. At this point, you want to keep your eyes up. You don't want to fall asleep completely, but it's still relaxation time, especially because the pace wasn't incredibly hot yet. I guess one interesting thing that people may not realize that, you can see a lot of snow on the ground and it's clearly cold out if you look at the spectators. But when you're in the packet, it's actually pretty hot, just from like all the body heat and like people breathing and stuff. So it's really not that cold when you're in the pack, and especially like your own body heat. So it's actually not as cold as you might think. At this point in the race, here's the funny story. So Morgan pulls up next to me and we are about 10 minutes in. And I remember looking up, the gator in front has a big clock on it. So you know how far into the race you are. So I remember seeing it was like 10 minutes in, and Morgan comes up to me and he's breathing really hard. And I was like, I kind of did a double take over, because like you're kind of sizing people up as the race goes too. And I'm like, man, this guy's breathing super hard. Like, did I overestimate this guy. I was like, man, I might have this like more so in the bag than I thought. Like Morgan sounds like he's fully anaerobic right now, like giving it everything he's got. And if you know the outcome of the race, you'll know that that was a mistake in thought. But yeah, I remember looking over and being like, man, Morgan's hurting. 10 minutes in, I was like, oh man, he's hurting bad. Like that's a great sign for me. Because I was feeling pretty good at this point. So as you'll see later, I would say, you know, don't count your chickens before they hatch, or like don't you know, don't think anything's a sure thing. Yeah, people can surprise you. So yeah, looking back, that was a mistake. But yeah.
No, I mean you've raced him a bunch since then as well. Is that something that you only experienced in this cross country race, or is he just one of those guys who might sound like he's breathing heavier and working harder than he actually is?
I don't think so. Like I don't think he is that type of guy that, yeah, there are some people that are just always breathing hard, but really like how hard they're working isn't always like what you would expect. I don't know what it was. Maybe I was just like trying to convince myself that he was in the hurt locker early. I don't know what it was, but I remember like really latching onto that and just being like, man, yeah, this dude might be toast. But yeah, we kept that pace pretty much straight through to the midway point. There weren't any massive moves. Nobody really tried anything crazy. I think Connor was at the front a bit. I think like Tyler Day and Matt Baxter were at the front a bit. I think Joe Klecker might have pushed a little bit too, but it was never enough to shake anybody. So yeah, we kept that pace up to about halfway or so.
So the only other question before we look at the 5K clip, when you talk about relaxation, right? Oh, it's really just like relaxation mode at this point. Maybe that's not what that word means to most people in most situations still, right? We're talking about just staying like well underneath that red line, like that maximum, like remaining composed. But talk to me about, are you experiencing nothing, or are you, you know, like you're working pretty hard still at the same time, like that 3K mark of a 10K, you're probably not, you know, wrecked or something like that. So kind of take me through that unique feeling of you're not thinking 7K to go, but you're 30% through the race, and maybe you're not dead, but you're certainly still already starting to work hard.
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting balance you have to strike, where mentally you have to be aware, but not like too hyper focused on anything. You don't want to be like completely asleep, because you might miss moves, like you might fade back in the pack, you might lose your position really badly. The positioning thing is less important in cross country, because it's, you know, it's not like track where, you know, you're more single file often. But, you know, you need to have eyes on the guys that are going to be dangerous. And I thought I had a good handle on that at that point in the race. All the guys that I thought would be vying for the win with over the last K were next to me or in front of me, or maybe slightly behind me, but I was right there with them. And so you want to be like watching these guys, and in the lead up, you want to know their strength and weaknesses, and how they might develop their own race plan around those things, and be ready for, you know, something that they do that you'll need to respond to. But, you know, if you're constantly like, if I were constantly looking over and trying to evaluate Morgan, then, you know, you just mentally wear yourself out. You do have to run your own race to some extent. So mentally it's like that. Physically it's like, you know, there's no need to be bumping into people and, you know, wasting energy in that regard. There's no need to be clipping people. You know, maybe if you go up a hill, there's no need to really slam it up the hill, because usually you can make up a decent amount of ground on the downhill, just like letting your legs run a little bit. So, you know, nothing too unnecessary. It's a long way to go. It's a long race. And usually the racing doesn't start till late. And so you want to relax so that when you get to the racing point, you're not fried, but you also want to be aware so that if anything weird happens before someone presses or there's a fall, whatever, you're ready enough for that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Prepared. So then we'll take it.
That's a good word for it.
Yeah. You want to be sitting there prepared. That makes a lot of sense. Taking it to the halfway point now of the race. We're at 5K here, and already you can tell there's less people in this pack than there were, but there still is a big pack.
Yeah. So at this point, people had been making these little presses, and things are more strung out now. As you can see, like the whole field is kind of 3-4 wide, whereas at one point there were probably 10 people wide. And so this clip is interesting. It's cool, like looking back at this one, because you can see so many athletes that have turned out to be really good pros or really good collegiates in it. You've got Tyler Day up there, you've got Baxter, you've got Joe Klecker. If you look for some green, you can see Yared Nagoose. You can see Cooper Tier run by. You can see Luis Grijalva. I'm trying to think of some more guys in this race. Some of my teammates.
I see Waleed right now.
Yeah, you can see Alex Osberg in there. I think Alec Parsons right at the back of that pack too.
Yep.
Some of those Furman boys. I think you got Jordy Beamish in there. I'm trying to think. I don't want to be disrespectful and miss someone that has become a very good runner. Ollie Hoare. Forsyth, Isai Rodriguez. Anyway, tons and tons of really good runners, maybe in their younger days, but excellent runners for sure. So this was a high quality meet. I mean, it's cool to kind of see some of the 1,500 miler guys step up and do a 10K. And then it's also nice to see some of the strength guys battle it out with them. So, man, it's NCAA Cross is a sight to see. It's really fun. We're only showing a few clips here, and I think they're a little choppy on my end. I don't know how they are on yours, but
on mine they're good, which is good because that's the visual that people will see.
All right, sweet. Because it's been freezing on my end, so I got a little nervous. But
no, I think we're handling it.
Yeah, I would encourage people to go back and watch this race. I really hadn't watched it much since I was in college. Not that I go back and watch my old races frequently at all, but I had no idea that I didn't know that Mo Ahmed commentated this race. So it's funny to hear him, like, before I met him at all. He's obviously pulling for Morgan because
huge Morgan homer.
Yeah, he wants the Badgers to get the win, but it's funny to hear him call me by my full name. Because we have like nicknames and stuff now that I know him, and it's a bit more casual of a relationship. But it's kind of cool to hear his commentary. But yeah, this is kind of when the race starts to begin moving, the halfway point.
I paused to hear. I wanted to talk to you about the footing because I feel like that was the big thing about nationals this year, besides the super close finish, because it wasn't snowing, but there's snow on the ground at most points. So talking about running through that, was there anything notable about it? Does it just end up feeling like a little bit like muddy? Were you used to it running in Michigan growing up?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. It honestly looks a little more grueling than it was. The dusting, it was a dusting of snow. It wasn't snowy. And then the footing was just standard cross country stuff. Like, sometimes you take a weird step and you kind of drop down or whatever. Sometimes when you're in a pack, there's a little dip and like it kind of makes your like stomach drop a little. If you've been in a pack, you might know that feeling. I wouldn't say it was anything out of the ordinary, especially like knowing Midwest courses and stuff. It was, I'd say, pretty standard. Nothing to write home about, but it did look cool. I mean, it did look tough. Yeah. So yeah, but that was when people started pressing about the halfway point. It can be, your first year in college, especially as a high school senior going to collegiate freshman. It can be daunting looking up at the clock at 5K. Because sometimes you run your 5K PR or your old 5K PR in the first half of the race, and you're like, oh man, this is gonna be a long one. This is gonna be a long way to the finish. So, but yeah, at that point, things are starting to thin.
Yeah. Anything else before we get to 8K? Because that is obviously a gap. The pack's going to shrink a little bit more. Or do you want to just run the clip and we can talk about it?
No, let's just run it.
All right. So at the 8K mark now, it's still about the same crew of you, honestly. There's that little inside part that isn't snowy, and then we got the rest of it. Morgan's going to lead with Mance. Talk to me about this point.
Yeah, so this is when I started to get a lot more alert. Morgan going to the front, that's a dangerous guy. So you want to have your head up, your eyes up, and I was trying to still have eyes on everybody. I think at this point I was right. Yeah,
it's not to interrupt you, but this is the big hill. Sorry.
Yeah, that is the hill. The hill is kind of on that backside loop. Yeah, I think I'm realizing now that my 10-minute in analysis of Morgan's fitness was probably faulty because he's at the front, starting to press a little bit. Again, he wasn't doing enough to really shatter the pack, which he had the fitness to do. But it seemed like he was just kind of dragging the thing along, just making sure it stayed honest. Yeah, we have a very distinct pack of maybe 12 guys there. So the contenders are starting to filter up, and but nobody had made a massive move yet. I was kind of waiting for someone to make that move so I could cover it. I knew I didn't want to make the move. That wasn't one of my strengths at the time, to really drive from a ways out. But one of my like race goals was to just like, if someone went, then I go too. And again, I haven't touched the front at this point. I'm still waiting. I'm still trying to conserve and run the race plan that I had. Those guys are kind of dictating it from the front. And I think everyone's eyes were up because Morgan was at the front. And because it's 8K in, you got to be wary of attacks at that point.
For sure. Yeah. Talk to me about, I'm going to freeze it here when it cuts to this wider camera angle, and you can see how much like the 13, 12 of you guys had really isolated at this point. I might be able to speak more about this feeling, but when you drop off of whatever pack you're running with and kind of fall into that no man's land, it is the hardest thing in the world. And it's also where such substantial margins are made, where you can realistically say like, oh, I was with someone at 8K and I finished like 40 seconds behind them, or I finished a minute behind them, or 30 seconds, or whatever the deal is. Because so often it's like, once that cord is cut between the pack and you or some of these guys at the back here, it's just there's nothing holding you up once that divide has happened, or once you kind of snap on that fitness line. I know you've been there too, occasionally, probably not as frequently and not so much recently, but it seems like you're pretty, maybe not relaxed, you're definitely working, but you're still upright and kind of positive with your energy at this point at 8K. But you've probably been in similar packs where you've felt at the end of your rope. What do you think about in that moment to not fall back, knowing kind of how dangerous that falling back can be for your race goals? You're pretty much almost always going to really be hitting a wall when that happens, trying to avoid it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to stay attached as long as you
Simple.
can. It's simple, but incredibly hard to do at the time. I think we talked about this in depth at one point, but the fewer decisions you can make during a race, the better, because each of those decisions take mental energy, but also, you don't want to be making decisions when you're tired or fatigued. That's when you make bad decisions. With most things in life, like when you're tired and fatigued or frustrated or whatever. So, I've been in that place where, the pack just starts slowly inching away from you, and you're just like giving it everything you have to stay attached because that's what's best. But sometimes you just can't, and man, that is a sinking feeling. It's so terrible because your legs feel dead. Oftentimes you tense up, which makes it worse. And you just kind of sink like a stone, and it feels like there's nothing you can do about it. And you have that negative momentum. Oh man, not a fun place to be. I've been there in races. I've been there in workouts. Been there on easy runs, man. And it doesn't feel good. It is a skill to stay composed as you're getting dropped. Because like, as much as you can say like, don't get dropped, like, there's only so much you can do sometimes. Like, like you can't race like so far above your fitness level that you can just tell yourself to stay attached, unfortunately. So yeah, when those things happen, it is a skill to kind of learn how to get dropped, if that makes sense. I mean, it's not something you want to practice or be in a situation where you're practicing it. But not completely falling apart when things are not going well is a skill. Thankfully in this race, I didn't have to do that or work on that.
For sure.
It was still attached. So, we just, built up from 8K, and like I said, from 8K to the finish, I was just waiting for someone to go. Maybe I was a little too antsy, or like maybe a little too focused on everybody. But as you'll see in a moment, the move never came. Nobody went like with a mile to go or like 2K to go.
Which you often see in cross. There's usually someone who's like, I can't win a 400 to go, and I'm going to go from longer out. So it seems like you were here. Let me put the thing in and pause it. It feels like you were anticipating that based on your race strategy. There was never really a thought from your end that, hey, maybe I need to be the one to set this just because the guy's in the field. Or talk to me about that.
Yeah. So that just wasn't my strength. Attacking from a ways out wasn't my strength. My strength was sit and kick. I feel like I was a very good rhythm runner when I was in college. So I guess I would explain that as like I could run a pace and make it feel as easy as I possibly could. And I was good at like shutting my brain down and really kind of falling into the pace and conserving energy like that. But as far as attacking went, as far as like back and forth fartlaking race type stuff went, I wasn't as good. I just didn't have that same background in training. I wasn't as strong. I don't think I was doing quite enough mileage to be good at that stuff. But honestly, the way the race was unfolding, sit and kick style, I was optimistic. I thought that raised my chances actually. I was happy that the race was going that well because I thought I had a good kick and could kick with these guys. So I was content with the unfolding, even though it wasn't what I expected. I expected a hard push from like NAU or Morgan or some of the Colorado guys or something, but those never came. And actually, I was happy with that outcome.
Well, let's watch the end. You take us through it. We're at 27:35. Yeah. I assume you guys are running for maybe a little over 29 minutes. I actually forget the official time thing, but there's one gap in the thing where they flash the second pack for like 20 seconds. But I'll let you kind of talk to me about kind of the close of this race. There's still 10 guys in the picture at 27:30, which is very rare. I feel like we haven't seen that since in a cross race or cross nationals, and we don't see it that often even previously. So I'll roll it.
Yeah. Certainly rare to have that many guys around with a minute and a half to go. So the course kind of dips down and then it curls to the right, and then the last like maybe 400 meters are slightly uphill all the way to the finish line. So you can see we're pressing a bit because some of the guys are starting to fall off a little bit. I'm still sitting in the second row with eyes up, maybe third row, just watching these guys waiting for a move. At this point, I realized it's going to be a sit and kick. Basically, run a 400 as hard as you can up this incline at the end.
This is the start of it, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to be in a good spot and be ready because this was just kind of like, hey, throw all strategy out the door. You're giving it everything you have for 400 meters. Like you said, there's more guys there than there usually are at the end of a 10K cross-country race. I think that's just a testament to how the race panned out. But so we turn the corner, and this is the final straight if you're watching on YouTube. Morgan gets a great jump because he was at the front of the pack, and I'm kind of right behind him. And essentially my strategy was sit behind Morgan, and then maybe with like 100 meters to
right
go,
there you move up,
swing wide. And so for a split second, I was like, this is it. Like, I think I can whip around the outside. And then Morgan hit another gear, and man, your boy took the L. and then Morgan threw up the Wisconsin W as he crossed the line. And I was like, man, Like I was so mad. I was like, oh, like I don't know. It's hard to describe the feeling because I was so close. I was like 3 meters away, and like things go flashing through your head. Like, man, what mistakes did I make? Like, how did
Not Grant. I froze it for anyone on YouTube. That was the exact same face you just made on the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Stream.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Oh.
You just like think back on everything. Like, man, did I do everything I could have? I thought I ran it well. I think Morgan was a better runner than me that day, but I was still pissed. And that kicked off like a bunch of really nice races that Morgan and I had that year. My senior year, his fifth year, both of our final years in college. I was mad.
That's the point.
I mean, I wanted to win.
That's the point where I felt like maybe it's a weird camera angle, but were you kind of swing wide right here, where everyone at home, we're all thinking that like you're gonna pull up there, and yeah, he definitely hits the gas on the second gear. I wonder. I mean, we can talk more cumulatively about your guys' rivalry and what the rest of that year looked like, but in that race, you being in the third row, kind of waiting for that move, getting to within 400 to go and still being there. I hear what you're saying about him maybe being a better runner than you on that day. He was pushing that pace. He was leading. He was the aggressor. He was kind of holding the race by the neck. Do you rethink that? I mean, obviously you rethink it, right? But like, would you have done anything differently? Like, could there have been a situation where you ended up on the front of that before? Because he gets this jump on you, which ends up being the final margin. And maybe he had more, could have gone. And he clearly goes again with about 100 to go as you pull up on his shoulder anyway. But how did you feel like your positioning, which, had kept you tucked in the entire race, kind of played out over that final 300? Was there could you have still done it if you just had the kick or the fitness or whatever, or did it put you in a really tough spot?
I thought about this race a lot, like afterwards, during my senior year. And I was like, I don't really know if like being in slightly better position could have won me that race. I use my final gear like when I swing outside right there. And Morgan had another one that I didn't have. I think even if we came into that final straightaway, like side by side, I think he still probably gets me. He was just a better kicker, a bit stronger. And, he had my number that day. And for most of my senior year, I think I only beat him. I think we matched up like maybe like 3 or 4 more times. I'm trying to think. My senior year.
Beat him at Milrose, and I think that might have been.
And I think I only beat him once. So he definitely had my number. And yeah, man, dude had some real estate in my head. I was like thinking like, man, how do I beat this guy? Because I was trying all different things like, push from 400 out, push from 200 out, try to get pole position, try to drag it out early, all these different things. And, he would almost always end up on top. I mean, it was a healthy rivalry. I wouldn't say like I hate Morgan by any degree. I think it'd be easier if like I really didn't like Morgan, because then I could be like, man, I hate that guy and I want to beat him. But it's harder when like, he's a good guy. Like obviously we're all competitive and want to win on the track, but it's harder when you talk after and like they're like a gracious winner.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there's any bad blood between me and Morgan, or that there's ever been. But I definitely wanted to beat him, and I think he wanted to beat me pretty bad too. But we had some good battles that made that year very exciting. But this was the start of my L's to Morgan of my senior year. But yeah, they were good, man. I look back and like it's nice to look back and see those battles now and like think about how both Morgan and I have grown since then, and the whole field. Like it's cool to see like a young Cooper Tier in there who's now running great, like a young Yard Nagoose who's now running great. Joe Klecker was at the front of that pack for a while, running great now. Ollie Hoare also in that pack, running great now. So it's cool to look back and see the progression.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also just an race to watch and rewatch, even if you're kind of ended up on the wrong side of that result, just because, you know, that cross country stuff normally doesn't come down to a final straight where 4 or 5 dudes can still win it. I mean, and it is a really got to be an awesome experience to win NCAA XC on your home course. I know Wisco had been building to that year for a couple of years. I think, if I remember correctly, he redshirted the previous fall, to have that year to come back and rip at home and win NCAAs. And it worked out for him in that case and kind of throughout the rest of that year, for sure. Yeah, I'm trying to think of just a couple things to wrap up on. Our team was 5th. NAU won. The rest of that top 8 looked like Kurgat from Iowa State in 3rd, Isai Rodriguez in 4th, Aaron Templeton and Furman coming in 5th, Tyler Day, and then Kemboy of Campbell in 7th, and Joe Klecker in 8th. It was it was quite a wild pack, and it was definitely a race that we felt like we had to recap. Just definitely the start of what was an awesome year of kind of head to head, and more broadly, both you and Morgan on the world stage now doing really well, and it's a really cool dynamic to see kind of play out.
Yeah, man, that was a fun year. I mean, certainly frustrating at times. Like you don't, like when you envision, like, or I guess that year when I was envisioning how my senior year went, it was like I wanted to win a title, and you know, Morgan won those titles pretty much all through the year, like cross country, indoor and outdoor. So the NCAA titles eluded me that year, but I do think I learned a lot in like understanding your strengths, learning how to race somebody that was just as good or better than you. You know, you can't win every race, and I think it's good that we broke down a race where I did not win. I think it'd be kind of annoying if I was like the guy that just breaks down races where I win. That'd be pretty short-sighted, but you can learn just as much or more from the races where you don't take home the W or accomplish all of your goals, or you know, have the perfect race than the other side where you walk away high-fiving everybody. You don't really analyze too much. But yeah, man, that was a fun rivalry we had, back and forth. It was fun.
Well, I'd say if I'm looking at it comprehensively, this race for you and then kind of your development since then, and I feel like the biggest takeaway is that you need a bunch of different tools in your toolbox if you want to win big races, you know. And you talked about it multiple times. I asked you the questions about positioning, about ever thinking about touching the front or doing something with the race before 400 or so to go, and it's you not being that type of runner. I look at, I mean, obviously running like American records or whatever, it's there's no doubt about like, oh, this dude's got tools, this dude's got the ability to win races and also run really fast. But something that you've really gotten, you know, like a special ability at currently, it seems like, at least, is once the pacers step off the track, squeezing a pace down from a K out, from 2K out, from 3K out, from whatever it needs to be, and like really closing hard, negative splitting from a long ways out. We've really maybe mostly seen it in kind of time trial situations, even if you were racing Mo at the 10. But I do feel like that's something that you've got to look at now. I mean, it's been a few years, 4 years later, I guess 3.5 years later, that's an ability that it seems like you now possess and has got to be more beneficial going into a race, because you're not just sitting there. It feels a little bit like, hey, in order to, like, your approach to 2018 might have been, hey, like, I might be able to win this race in different ways, but really in order to win this race, it's got to be, you know, not absolutely insane, fartlicking back and forth the whole time. And I've got to be in a good position. And if it's a tight race at the end and it's a little bit slower, I can take this. Versus now, I feel like, obviously, you know, 2022 Grant wouldn't be walking into a college cross country race, but if you were, you have all the tools. You have this range where you can win races in different ways and different styles. And I feel like when someone can start to reach that level, that's really the mark of a guy who's kind of on a really high level in the sport. So I don't know if your takeaway also from that was like, hey, I've got to get good in like a broad sense, and like I've got to be able to handle things in different dimensions, or if you didn't think about it, but just training with Jerry for a few years and finishing up your college career kind of got you there. But I'd really be interested in if you think that that's kind of like, you know, when you only got one way to win a race, it's objectively a lot harder to win the race versus if you've got 3-4 different ways that you can kind of style it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was getting at was at one point when I said, like, looking back, it's cool to see how both Morgan and I have grown since then. I mean, like you said, and I said a few times, my strength was the sit and kick, and I wasn't as good at the other style of races, nor was I as confident in those style of races. So, yeah, one of my biggest takeaways with all those races with Morgan were just that I need to get better. Like I need to like train harder in a way that I'll be prepared for these different styles of races and be prepared to race a better athlete than me. We kind of started toggling things my senior year a little bit, just like practicing squeezing a race from a mile out, which was something I hadn't done in the past. And I think I got better at it and stuff, but it wasn't enough time to really have enough confidence and ability to really dictate a race like that, especially when you have, Morgan, who had a pretty large toolkit. I felt like he was a bit more complete of a runner than I was at that point. And so, yeah, I've worked on those weaknesses a bit, and I feel quite a bit more confident in different style of races, like you said. So there's always room for growth. That was a big moment of growth for me. My junior year was a little bit of a down year, just like performance-wise, mentally, physically. I kind of had to refine the sport a little bit. So my senior year, I was like guns a-blazing, let's do this. I came up short more than I came out on top, for sure. But yeah, good learning experiences. I'm still friendly with Morgan. I know he's got the Coffee Club pod, which has slightly more clout than us.
I'm not gonna lie, they have more clout. You got to get up.
They have way more clout than us, dude.
They post consistently too, which is something that I think we've got to get on if we want that. I think he's got a vlog. I mean, he's definitely got the influencer tag right now in a positive way for him.
Yeah, I mean they're crushing the pod game right now, so we've got some steps to take to maybe match that. But good memes for sure.
For sure. Yeah. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of attempt at a slightly new alteration to a format we've definitely revisited a lot in season 1. Hopefully the podcast still makes sense. I feel like we did a good job of explaining it, but definitely feel free to check out the YouTube with the additional clips, or like Grant said, the full race video, which is also online. And let us know kind of how you feel, what you think about this version of race recaps. We'd love the feedback, really appreciate it. And then also future race recaps, because if this is a tool that you guys also enjoy us using and kind of bringing in more of the video component on YouTube, I feel like it definitely expands our ability to do these and to do these really well. So yeah, we're definitely taking suggestions. You can comment below. You can also email us at Halfstep Pod or Instagram DM. There's like a billion ways to reach us at this point. I'm sure that we can figure out something. I might be forgetting like a couple things, it feels like, but at the same time, I think that this was a good summation of that race. So it was definitely a growth experience for you, but also it's still like a really solid effort. I mean, runner up at NCAAs, I know didn't feel good, but at the same time, it's not something you can be like overwhelmingly pissed about at the same time. It's tough. It's a tough balance. I know.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like the end of the world at the time, but yeah, I mean, like you said, it's, second in the NCAA is nothing to be too upset about.
No, but you're right. It's nothing to like sit there and actually be like on the plane back. Like, yeah, like top 2. That's never how it actually ends up being. Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, yeah, it seems like less of a big deal looking back now, but at the time, man, I was pissed. Yeah.
I mean, all runners, professional runners, are probably unhealthily competitive sometimes. So that one stung. It did kick off a lot of growth. So some good comes out of the L's sometimes,
It's got to. Otherwise, you're just taking L's for no reason. Right?
Yeah, true. That'd be no good.
If you're not growing from that, then what do you get? You're just taking L's. Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else, or are we kind of wrapping this one up?
No, man, I think we're good. I mean, we pumped that for an hour.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully we didn't ramble too much. I feel like I rambled for a little bit there, but hopefully it was easy to follow. If you watch the YouTube version, you get more visual cues. I was trying not to like just be like, okay, here I'm grinding, and now I'm like looking up and I'm trying hard, because if people are just listening to the audio, that doesn't do much. So hopefully it was all right.
Yeah. Feel free to download the podcast. Also watch and like the YouTube video and comment and interact with us in as many ways as possible, so we can one day catch the clout that Coffee Club Pod currently has. We will be back soon. I believe there will be a guest interview as the next thing to drop for the Halfstep Pod, which should be pretty exciting. And then we should be back towards the end of next week as well. Go Heels tonight in the Final Four game, and I know you'll be cheering as well with Thomas. Thank you guys all for listening to another episode of the Halfstep Pod. We will catch you guys next time. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you guys.